Hey everybody, and welcome to this webinar from the Sustainability Leaders Collaborative. I'm Kathy Kuntz with the Dane County Office of Energy and Climate Change. In just a second here, I'm going to turn things over to Rachel Darken, who is the Assistant Fleet Superintendent for the City of Madison. And Rachel's going to talk to us about their efforts to use renewable diesel. If you've got questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A, and Rachel says that we can address those as we go along. So if you put them in, I will alert her that there's a question and we'll take it up. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you for helping to organize this. I'm really excited to be here. Um, so just to chat a little bit about what I'm going to cover, I'm going to start with the big picture and go over our sustainability plan and how we're getting to where we are here at the city. Then we'll dive into those basic facts about renewable diesel, what I've learned, and how our testing process has gone so far at the city. And then I'll touch a little bit on future goals. And as Kathy mentioned, very happy to take questions at any point. Please feel free to interrupt. Um, so in 2024, last year, the city updated our sustainability plan, and it covers 24 goals organized into 8 elements of a sustainable city. So everything from affordable housing to design and infrastructure, renewable energy, sustainable transportation, all of the above, and more. And this is really to capture what the city has been working on to date and then what we're looking at in the future to get us to our 2030 goal. And, you know, there's just really one goal that focuses in on what we do at City of Madison Fleet. So we support the general municipal fleet, and that's everything except for water utility and metro transit. So the large majority of city vehicles and equipment you see out there, that's what we maintain and fuel. So in the sustainability plan, our goal is to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions from city vehicles and equipment 90% by 2030 from the 2018 baseline. And so there's 3 actions tied to this. The first action is building out that necessary electric vehicle charging infrastructure at all of the city facilities. And that's underway right now. Our engineering division is really focusing on that effort and working closely with us in those planning about where to put the charging infrastructure and how we can prepare for future electrification. And action 9.2, we're purchasing electric light and medium duty fleet vehicles already to the greatest extent feasible. So to date, we have 130 electric vehicles in service, and we have over 170 hybrid vehicles as well. So, this is something we're continuing to do. And really, the third action is why we're talking today. And this is looking at the heavy duty side of our fleet. So this action is really transition the heavy duty fleet to X clean fuel. The writers of the plan looked at 100% biodiesel, electric, or other low or no carbon fuel. So like recognizing that this is an open question about what will work best for this side of the fleet. And thinking about heavy duty equipment, we know that there's a lot of challenges with electrification in this realm, not only with the cost of the equipment itself, but also just how the performance of that equipment matches with how we're currently using the diesel equivalent and what changes we might need to make for that. So with this action, what we've been doing is to date at the city, we of course have a couple electric heavy duty trucks in the field right now that we're testing, but we also did a pilot of B100 in the last 2 years. And so I just want to touch on that really quickly because this was something that we thought would be a really good fit. In this pilot program, we upfit almost 20 trucks, most of which were garbage trucks, with equipment to run 100% biodiesel year round. And essentially that was adding a separate fuel system to all of these trucks. And then the way the system worked, you started the engine and it started up on the diesel side. And then it used the waste heat from the engine to precondition the biodiesel side of things. And then it automatically switched over and ran on the 100% biodiesel for the rest of the duty cycle. And then when you shut off the engine, it actually ran for just a little bit longer and flushed out the biodiesel from the system. So you didn't have any issues at startup the next time. And, bottom line, it did work. We ran it year round from 2022 through 2024. But there were some issues that we had. One, we are still starting up and shutting down on the diesel side of things. And we found that we were using a lot more diesel, especially in the colder temperatures, than we had anticipated going in. So on average, over the course of a year, that equipment ran 65% of the time on the 100% biodiesel and the rest of the time on the diesel side. So that's still a fair amount of diesel. And then we were also looking at the reality of adding this system to all of our trucks. We have around 500 diesel trucks, and the cost of the B100 system was anywhere between $20,000 and $30,000 to add to that truck. And if you're experiencing what we are, we're having really high vehicle prices, especially in the heavy duty side of things. So our capital budget was already, stretched to the max. So the idea of adding that on was not really beneficial for us. The other thing is that we needed to be upgrading our fuel infrastructure. So we have all of our own fueling sites across the city that we have fuel dispensed out of, and the 100% biodiesel is not compatible with current fueling infrastructure. You need to have new tanks and new dispensers and hoses and everything installed. So in addition to the capital to the trucks, we were also looking at investing in a large, capital project for at least a couple fuel sites that we have in order to support that heavy duty fleet. And then finally, we have a really wide range of equipment that we're running. And the company that we worked with for the pilot, they have a few trucks that they know how to work with, a few makes and models that they know in and out, and they're willing to try other designs, but it takes a while, as we found out with when we asked them to do one of our really heavy duty chippers. They got it working, but it took several months to design and engineer. And so, they haven't been able to do this on fire trucks yet. They haven't been able to do this on sweepers yet. There's just a lot that we would still be running on diesel for a long time until all of that got outfitted correctly to run the B100. And then, of course, there's the additional maintenance that we were adding by adding another component to that equipment. It's just another thing to maintain, another thing that might break down. So last year, when we were coming to this conclusion that this might not be the best fit for us and our goals, one of the vendors we were working with said, "Hey, would you like to try renewable diesel? We might be able to get it for you for not too bad of a price." So we said, "Okay, let's talk." So now let's dive into what renewable diesel is and how it compares, especially to biodiesel. So this chart just looks at some of those qualities of the two different fuels, biodiesel and renewable diesel. So both biodiesel and renewable diesel are made from the same feedstock. So soybean oil, agricultural waste, waste cooking oil, all of that can be made into both fuels. It just uses a different chemical process to refine that fuel, refine the feedstock into the fuel. And so that's how you get the two different products. Because it's a different process to make renewable diesel, it actually ends up being chemically the same as petroleum diesel. And I'm not a chemist, so don't get into the details with me. But because of that, it meets ASTM D975 spec for petroleum diesel. And so that's the key here, because biodiesel does not. So that means renewable diesel is a true drop-in fuel. You can run it in existing equipment, existing infrastructure, and it's fully compatible. And thank you, Kathy, for that reminder. Both fuels, they reduce emissions and that carbon footprint. So there's a lot of different sources here because if you're looking at this data yourself, because the feedstock that is used to make each fuel, it can change that life cycle carbon footprint for that fuel. So on average, we were seeing about 74% emissions reduction with the B100 And it's on average the same for renewable diesel. When we look at the numbers that I'm sharing a little bit later, we're using 65% as our conservative number for emissions reduction with renewable diesel. Both fuels do have cold weather challenges. This was a little surprising to me when I first started reading about renewable diesel. Biodiesel has a cloud point of anywhere between 26 and 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, that varies based on the feedstock used. Renewable diesel, it does have a cloud point much lower. It can be as low as 14 degrees Fahrenheit, and that also can vary. But the key point here is that if it is stored near its cloud point, it can freeze solid. So that's definitely a big challenge and something you have to keep in mind as you're thinking about rolling in renewable diesel. As I mentioned, both fuels have different compatibility. Biodiesel is compatible with everything existing up to blends of 20%. If you go above that, you start to get into warranty issues. Biodiesel is a powerful solvent, so it can degrade rubber fuel lines and other things. You don't have that issue with renewable diesel. It's fully compatible. And then this bottom line of the chart is just a quick snapshot of what we've tested in our fleet to date. On the biodiesel side of things, in addition to the B100, which we tested in about 20 trucks, we are consistently running blends of B20 and B5 in our entire fleet throughout the year. So we run the B20 gallons in the summer months and we switch to B5 in the winter months. So we have a lot of experience with biodiesel in our fleet. On the renewable diesel side of things, we've tested a variety of blends. And the reasons we've done this is not only just to see what might work, and also those cold weather implications that we have to work through, but also because the properties of the fuel is a little bit different, and renewable diesel is not as, it doesn't have as much lubricity as the biodiesel does. And so you can actually get the best of both fuels by blending them together, which is why, in addition to R99, which is basically 100% renewable diesel, we've also tested a blend of 80% renewable diesel and 20% biodiesel, as well as a blend of 25% renewable diesel mixed with the rest of its petroleum diesel in the winter months. So this is what we've done. In 2024, just a year ago, we were approved for a small pot of money to test renewable diesel in our fleet. So we chose one fuel site and we got over 20,000 gallons delivered to that site in the summer of 2024. It worked well. We did not fully advertise to all of the operators that we were doing this. We let the departments know in advance, but we also knew that, especially with our B100 experience, if you change something with a fuel, these operators, this is their day-to-day office. This is what they work in. And if they're not on board with that change, it might mean that every small issue is attributed back to that fuel. So we wanted to just see, would issues crop up with this fuel without that kind of preconceived notion about that, and it did not. So we were really, really happily surprised and ready to move forward. So we started working on a plan for testing it in 2025 and expanding. We wanted to really, like I said, test those blends for the winter, colder months. And it ended up taking us a while to get started in 2025 because the vendor we were working with to start was not able to deliver blends of the fuel. As you probably know, it's not readily available here in the state, so it has to come from out of state, which is one of the challenges that we're going to talk about in a bit. And if the vendor you're working with doesn't have the ability to store a load on their own premises, and if you don't have the ability to store it yourself and do your own blending, it can become a big challenge. So finally, in March of this year, we were able to identify a vendor who could deliver blends for us, and we started working on that blend of R25 in 2 fuel sites. So we expanded our reach. And we ran over 55,000 gallons of fuel in that time until the temperatures got warm enough and we felt comfortable switching over to a summer blend of the R80 B20 beginning in May. And we ran about 50,000 gallons of that. And as you see, and we'll talk about the price in just a little bit, the price started to creep up. And because we were using a different fuel source, so a different feedstock as well, we wanted to make sure we tested R99. So we switched to R99 in July, and that's what we're currently testing. We've gotten about 34,000 gallons of that as well. And, just big snapshot, this is what we've done. This has worked really well mechanically. But let's talk about the price. So just a little background that when we first started looking at different fuel options, 7 years ago, we got a quote for renewable diesel and it was about $7 a gallon. And so that was a no for us. And that's when we started looking at biodiesel blends and B100 and everything else. So the price that we see here is comparing the renewable diesel blend that we got in these different time periods across the chart compared with the regular fuel price that we're getting for the rest of our fleet. And when I say regular fuel price, I mean the B20 or the B5 that we would normally be using anyway, given our normal fuel program. So it's not petroleum diesel, it's the B5 or B20. So you can see that it ranges from anywhere from like 80 cents a gallon more to almost $2 a gallon more. So there's a lot of volatility in the price. Our price has been tied to the heating oil index. That is something that we are comfortable with in our budget. I do want to just mention we've never really locked in our fuel prices. The other main fuel user at the city is Madison Metro Transit. They lock in their prices. And so as a hedge on the market, we've just always floated our prices a little bit more. So we're comfortable with a little bit of volatility in our fuel pricing. But this jumped around a lot more than we anticipated at the start. And what we learned is that, the geopolitical climate can really impact the fuel. I noticed when I was logging some of these fuel prices that literally a week before the Israel-Iran conflict started, our renewable diesel price skyrocketed. So something to keep in mind. However, the beauty of this fuel is that it's a drop-in fuel. We didn't add equipment to our trucks. We didn't upgrade our fuel infrastructure. We don't have any, investment that makes it possible for us to run this fuel. All it is the price. So at any point, we can pivot, we can pause, we can say, we're going to get B20 now instead. And we still get the benefit of all of those emission savings right away. And, in 2024, when we started embarking on this test, we did go through a cost benefit analysis comparing a scenario of, let's just imagine that tomorrow our entire diesel fleet was running on B100 and all of the cost implications with that compared to everything is running on renewable diesel. And what that showed was that we save more emissions with less upfront cost much more quickly with renewable diesel. And that's, that was really getting at the goals for us at this point, which is how can we, get to that 90% emissions reduction by 2030? How do we help our fleet transition to clean fuels in the long run? So we are updating that cost benefit analysis now with these current prices that we're seeing. But we anticipated it's probably going to be about the same because we were pretty conservative in our original analysis. So what have we run it on? We've run it on basically everything. As I mentioned, we've actually gotten it in 3 fuel sites now across the city in the summer, and almost 400 vehicles have fueled on this across 8 departments in the city. And essentially that's 3/4 of our heavy duty vehicle fleet. So everything from fire engines and ladders, light and medium duty trucks, all of our refuse collection trucks, street sweepers, our plow trucks, mowers, it's all running on renewable diesel and it's going very well. Our operators would be in an uproar if it was not. And what are the benefits of what we're doing? What are we getting out of this? Um, so really, a lot of it is the emissions reduction. So this chart is comparing the total gallons that we got of renewable diesel. So those gallons are noted on the bottom with, let's say we instead got the same number of gallons with the biodiesel blend that fits that time period, or just straight up petroleum diesel. So you can see that clearly the renewable diesel blends are giving us a good bang for their buck. And of course, the R25 is showing less emissions reductions because it's only 25% renewable diesel, but it definitely beats out the B5 that we would have normally been running anyway. So in total, through the course of this test so far, we've saved over 600 metric tons of CO2 compared to our normal fuel plan of B20 or B5. So that's the equivalent of over 500 EVs driven in 1 year. Remember, we have 130 EVs in our fleet so far in service, so that's like quadrupled what we've already been able to do with real electric vehicles on the road. It's also the equivalent of over 200 tons of waste being recycled instead of sent to the landfill. So this is really making a big impact right at the get-go. And what has it really done? Let's talk about what that experience has really looked like. As I mentioned, it works for our operations. No complaints from operators, no mechanical issues that we have encountered. And as I mentioned, you can easily switch back and forth as needed. You're not investing in any equipment. So if the price gets a little too high or if it's not available for some reason, we've experienced sometimes a little capacity at the rack issue if they're doing maintenance or whatever. You can easily switch back and forth. You're not, waiting weeks on end for a refinery to be back online. The biggest issue is definitely the logistical supply. Trucking deliveries from out of state, it's not ideal and not what we're going to continue doing. We had to do that in order to test this out, make sure it works. But that's not going to be sustainable for the long run in any sense of the word. In addition, with it having to be out of state, we've needed to increase the lead time for our orders. So for the rest of our fuel, normal deliveries, we can order for next day delivery. For this, we need, at minimum 2 to 3 days lead time to plan out an order. So that can get a little tricky, especially when you're thinking about making sure that you're not, that you're using all the fuel that you have, but you're not, setting yourself up for any operational issues, thinking of like a snowstorm coming, right? We want to make sure that we have the fuel available when we need it. As I already discussed a little bit, the blending can be challenging. There's no close tanks, so your vendor has to be able to work on that with you, or you need to be able to provide a storage tank for storing and then doing your own blending as well. And, at times there are some capacity issues at the rack. Sorry, my notes just disappeared for a second there, but, are the refiners that we've been working with, sometimes they have maintenance that comes up and you can pivot at any point. It's also, no secret that the majority of renewable diesel is going out west right now. And so that's, just a reality that we have to work on. And then finally, we are still testing the cold weather blend. We weren't able to start getting R25 blends until March of this year. And if you recall, it wasn't the coldest March that we've ever experienced. So we definitely want to still put that to the test this winter. And what we've learned from that is that having the ability to test the fuel specs when you make any switches has really been a game changer. Every time we get a new blend, we're testing to see what those fuel properties are. With the R25 that we got this spring, it actually had a cloud point of -2 degrees Fahrenheit, which was a lot better than I thought it would be. But like I said, that can change if the feedstock composition changes a little bit. So you want to test to make sure that you are, aware of the parameters that you need to work in. And then let me see if I can get to the next page. There we go. Um, so our future goals. We really want to establish like an annual fuel program, what that would look like in terms of folding renewable diesel into our whole program. Um, I'd like to know, what blends are we recommending that we use during which periods of the year, and what are the temperature thresholds that we're looking at so that it's really clear cut. This is what we know that works. We don't have to, make any guesses that way. I'm also working with my team to develop a budgeting tool. Um, we we have, a set operating budget, and I'm very lucky that in our 2026 cost to continue process, we were able to include some funding for renewable diesel for into next year as well. So I have a pot of money, but with all of the variability with how we can approach that, what blends we can use, I'm I would like to develop a better tool to make sure that we're maximizing that and while also being responsible to the taxpayers and everything. Um, I also want to expand our use across the rest of our fleet and with the rest of the agencies in the city. Water utility and Metro Transit, as I mentioned, they do their own maintenance and their own fuel. They've been doing a little bit of testing, but if we can get them expanded in this as well, I think that'll be really key to number three, increasing the supply in the area. Um, this has really been a chicken and egg problem. While we're interested in getting renewable diesel, it's not available here. It's hard to find vendors who can get it to us at a price that works. Um, and so, there are a number of vendors who are exploring opportunities to have storage near Madison, including the vendor that we're currently working with. But having more entities in the area interested in this will really help them pull the trigger to invest in that infrastructure and get the fuel more readily available. And that's where, I'm really interested in exploring any cooperative purchasing opportunities, whether that's, going in on quoting together or bidding out set dollar, gallon amounts. That's something that the city is very open to exploring. Kathy, I saw that you unmuted. Was there a
Yeah,
question?
there are two questions, Rachel. So Dean is asking, what is the chemical structure of renewable diesel? Does burning a gallon of renewable diesel result in the same amount of power as burning a gallon of petroleum diesel? If renewable diesel is composed of carbon-based chemicals, how is it, how does it yield less CO2 emissions?
Okay, that's a great question. And I am not a true chemist, so I won't be able to fully answer it. But I think that it is a cleaner burning fuel. So there's less, I know that there's less NOx emissions from the tailpipe itself with renewable diesel. But also, when you look at the total life cycle carbon footprint. That's where you get those emissions reductions because of the feedstock used to create the fuel. It's not coming from petroleum, it's coming from those renewable sources that can also include the carbon sequestration that happens. In terms of power, I think it is very close. Certainly, we have not noticed any operational issues in terms of power. Um, but I don't know, the exact amounts off the bat. So happy to follow up on that question as well.
Okay, terrific. And I do have the ability to unmute people if you'd rather like ask your question directly. I guess you have to say in the chat, like, Kathy, unmute me. So in the Q&A then, Rose from Sun Prairie asks, so they don't have their own fueling infrastructure, so they rely on fueling gas and diesel fleet vehicles at local Quick Trip stations. And they've had some conversations with Quick Trip about setting up a renewable diesel pump, but it hasn't gone anywhere. And so you're, I know that part of this is you are thinking about how more folks in the region could use renewable diesel. Do you have thoughts about smaller communities who don't have their own fueling stations?
Yeah, that's where my thoughts kind of go towards definitely the quick trip in the area. And that is the big challenge. One thing that I've seen recently is a push to get this is not renewable diesel, but biodiesel available at the pump, like 100% biodiesel available at pumps across the country. And I'm thinking that that's where the industry is also going to be going with renewable diesel. Um, and if you don't have your own fueling infrastructure, of course, you're very much reliant on whatever is available commercially to you. And so I encourage you to continue talking with the partners at Quick Trip or any other fueling stations. Um, yeah, that's a tough one if you don't have your own infrastructure to work with.
Well, and I'm thinking, I mean, even for us at the county, we have some of our own infrastructure, but when we're plowing snow, we're way out everywhere. And it does seem like a place though where some collaboration might be useful. Quick Trip has in the last 2 years really leaned into EV charging in a way that has surprised some folks that, oh wait, they're doing EV charging and they do CNG. So maybe it's about more of us collectively having that conversation about the interest in renewable diesel that could persuade them. It seems like if if local suppliers had a supply that like might simplify some of your supply issues too in some moments, that if you knew that, oh, in a pinch we could fuel this vehicle over here or over there because, you know, there's something
Hmm.
there that some of what you were describing about the challenges of projecting fuel use and being on top of this, that could
Hmm.
help with a little bit. And then,
Yeah.
okay, there's another question. Just again, the emission savings, you're assuming a 65% cut in emissions from standard diesel when you're doing the R99, right? When you're doing the
Correct.
full renewable diesel and will like it could be better than that, but that's sort of the assumption you're making and yeah, again, that has to do with how that fuel comes together and is then chemically changed to essentially be diesel.
Correct. Yeah.
Not
The 65% number is actually from the California Air Resources Board. So that's like I said, the most conservative number that I found. So that's where we are just kind of baseline looking at things. And I think as there's more testing done in the life cycle emissions of all of these fuels, that'll become a little bit more clear and pinpointed as well.
So I don't see other questions there right now, although folks should, like, you can put it in the chat or the Q&A. One, so Rachel, I know you guys you've had some conversations with local governments. The Madison mayor, Satya Rhodes Conway, brought this issue up at a SLC meeting we had back in June, and that caused, I think, some local governments to reach out to you. I think you're also probably talking to the state. I mean, what is a regional solution? Is it how local is that? Or could that be like a number of municipalities and counties across Wisconsin use renewable diesel, and that could create like give me a sense of how local is practical here.
Yeah. You know, just going back a little bit to think about like when we were trying to find renewable diesel and we knew that we wanted to test this out and we're trying to get a vendor who could deliver those blended loads. There's a lot of vendors out there who have access to renewable diesel, and it's just a matter of them working out the pathways to get it here. And that is not insurmountable. That is very much available. Um, they have they the suppliers in the region and the area have committed to providing biodiesel at the rack, and renewable diesel is just the next step. And so I think, what these vendors need in order to take that step is just an awareness that there are communities who are asking for it. There are private companies who are interested in it as well. And getting it available locally, even just at the storage terminal to start, will start that trickle effect to get it available elsewhere. I think that's kind of probably what, you know, entities like Quick Trip are coming up against, as they consider this, as they hear from their customers that, maybe this person or this entity wants to have access to renewable diesel, but oh, we can't get it here very easily, so it's not available yet. We're not going to look at it too much. But I think the more that we can be vocal about the desire to run this here, to show that it works and that it really makes an impact right away, will allow the vendors to see that it's worth their while.
Right, right. That makes sense. So Kevin is asking where it gets trucked from. Like in your
Mhm.
experience, is it mostly all made further west than us too?
Yes. Um, so we got some of our renewable diesel all the way from Louisiana, to start, and now it's coming from North Dakota. Um, and in my little research that I've done, and again, I'm not a fuel producer, so if there is anyone out there watching, I apologize if I'm incorrect. But what I understand is that the process is it can be done with the same kind of refinery setup. It's just a different process, and it takes a little more energy to start, like actual physical energy to convert it to renewable diesel. So it can be easier for those plants to do biodiesel instead. But as we all know, the biodiesel is just not as you can't be as flexible with it in your fleet. So the renewable diesel is out there. It's just and the plants are coming more online. I know that there's a lot of, especially like sustainable aviation fuel plants, which is very similar, being built across the country as well. So it's coming closer to the Midwest and to the East Coast as well. It's just in the works.
Thank you. That I don't know, I find it somewhat encouraging that the plants in the Midwest are making some renewable diesel. It's probably my personal North Dakota bias, but we also have a question. So there, do you have a cost analysis to show if this has saved money by allowing the affected vehicles to potentially run more efficiently?
I don't have that cost analysis right now, no. But that's something that we can look into. We just don't have enough data to dig into that quite yet. Um, but but yes, that is something that we're intrigued by. When we were talking with some fleet users of renewable diesel out west who've been running exclusively on it, one of the things that intrigued us is that one of the fleets actually sold their DPF cleaner because they just their DPFs, their filters just were not getting as dirty, and they just didn't need to clean them as much, because of the renewable diesel, because it just burns that much cleaner. And so think about what that might do in terms of, regen time and all of that. Um, there is some real possibility there of some cost savings.
Very cool. Um, do we have more questions? Want to give folks another second in either of those places to drop a question if there's another question. Otherwise, this, so Rachel, if people want to stay informed with the City of Madison's efforts to make this transition and continue to do renewable diesel, is there a particular thing they can do to kind of stay in the loop with you? Is this a thing you report out on somewhere or something?
Yeah, so on our website, cityofmadison.com/fleet, we do have an emissions reduction tracker that we keep updated. You can also sign up to get notified if we have any new blog posts on there. And I know that once we have that new cost benefit analysis done, we'll be sharing a little bit more about our renewable diesel testing on there. I also encourage everyone to sign up to attend this year's Transportation and Innovation Expo. It's being held in the Monona Terrace on October 28th. And there's going to be a lot of great speakers and and networking that'll happen there. But there's also going to be a large expo floor that is also just open to the public too, with vendors and equipment. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities to talk more about clean fuels, including renewable diesel, at that conference.
Good pitch for let me throw that website in for
Thank you.
who are not aware of that, particularly if you're locally here in Dane County. That's a great opportunity to see a lot of equipment, to talk to a lot of experts in a variety of clean fuel spaces all in one spot. Um, Definitely. I am not seeing more questions, so I think with that we will wrap things up. This was a terrific overview, Rachel. Thanks again. Folks, I will post a recording of the webinar and send it out to everybody who attended, so that'll be coming shortly. I'm sure we're going to keep talking about this because it's an exciting opportunity. Thanks so much, Rachel. Have a good day,
Thank
everybody.
you.